And welcome back. Legionnaires' disease is a severe form of pneumonia which can be very deadly. Our next guest successfully represented more than 24 people with related injuries in the Bronx 2015 Legionnaires' disease outbreak and has recently announced a notice of claim against New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation on behalf of a Harlem resident who contracted Legionnaires' disease this past August. Joining us now to share more details is principal attorney at the Catter Law Firm, Ronald J. Catter. And Ronald, good to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, bring us up to speed. I mean, obviously, we talked about the case in the Bronx in 2015, but more recently in Harlem, as we continue to find these cases being more prevalent across New York City. For somebody who may not be so familiar, let's just first give them a background about Legionnaire's disease.
Of course, sure. That's a great place to start. Now, Legionnaire's disease is a bacterial illness. It's caused by the Legionella bacteria. People didn't know about it until about the 1970s, so it's been with us for about 50 years. And it got its name Legionnaire's disease because there was a convention in the city of Philadelphia at a hotel, Legion Association, which is a veterans group, and they were stricken with an unknown illness, bringing down dozens of their members who were staying at that hotel, and they didn't know what it was. They investigated it and tracked it to a particular bacteria, which got the name Legionella bacteria based on the American Legionnaires' presence in that hotel and being the source of the illness. Now, it turns out that Legionella bacteria is a naturally occurring bacteria. It's found in nature, it's found in streams, lakes, other natural bodies of water. But what happens in our urban environments, there are certain places where Legionella grows well beyond its natural amount, and it causes infection in city residents. So if you were to counter it naturally, there would be a low level of the bacteria present. But unfortunately, in our urban environments, and because of the way the weather is in the summer, there's more occasion for it to accumulate.
And where I shared a little bit earlier in the lead, I talked a little bit about more than 24 Bronxites really were affected with Legionnaire's disease. And then also you filed a notice of claim against the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation. Let's talk about that, the recent one in August. What's behind the notice of claim?
Okay, a notice of claim is a requisite for filing a case against a public authority, the city of New York, and other government-related entities. So the New York City Health and Hospitals is a public authority. They maintain the Harlem Hospital. And this summer, there were approximately 18 cases linked to the Harlem Hospital. And getting back to the causes of the illness, or if I can go back a step and say what the illness is, you mentioned that it's a pneumonia-like disease. And indeed, it's a disease that affects the lungs initially, but it can get, if it's not treated and addressed promptly, it can affect body organs, cause something called septic shock, which is a drop in blood pressure that affects the heart, lungs, kidneys. People can get kidney failure from it. And ultimately, about 10% of people who are diagnosed with Legionnaire's disease actually can die from it. There's also a group of people who are more susceptible to Legionnaire's disease. And I don't know if I'm skipping ahead here, but there are people over 50, people who have chronic breathing conditions like asthma, COPD, people who are immunocompromised who may be receiving medications that affect their immune response. Smokers are also another large group of people who seem to get Legionella disease. So with the Bronx disease, with the Harlem outbreak, it was noted that people in particular zip codes were getting a higher than usual incidence of Legionnaire disease. And this is a mandatory reporting illness, which means that if a doctor detects Legionella disease, they must report it to the health department so that it can be tracked. And in this case, they observed that there was a high incidence of Legionella disease in several particular zip codes. The health department was able to test the water towers, the cooling towers. And that's also a misperception. It's not water towers, it's cooling towers at the Harlem Hospital to be the source, and found that that was the source of this outbreak.
So for a person right now that may be watching and just this is new information to them, maybe they've been affected. What happens to a person if they've been affected by Legionnaire's disease? What's the legal recourse that's available to them?
Well, similar to other what they call negligence cases, as someone who permits Legionella to grow in their building without taking appropriate measures to stop it and decontaminate, and it spreads, they are responsible to people who get sick for allowing that to exist in the environment. You know, it's an environmental injury. You know, getting into a little more detail about it, if you want to, if we could talk about the cooling towers, they're on tops of buildings and they disperse water vapor that contains Legionella, that could contain Legionella bacteria. And that is spread into the environment with the wind, with the hot air currents, and it can go through a neighborhood where the people are present. They're inhaling that into their lungs, and that's how the disease is transmitted. It's not a contagious disease from one person catching it from someone else, but it's something that's there are other incidences, and I can talk about those, but in this case, it appears that that was the case, that the cooling towers at the hospital were dispersing water vapor, which is invisible. We can't see it. As we speak, when we talk, we have water vapor coming out of our mouths, but you can't see it. In cold weather, you can see it when you have that mist in front of your face when you're talking. That's water vapor, but you're only seeing it because it's cold out. Usually we can't see water vapor. And the Legionella is so tiny that it's effectively breathed deeply into someone's lungs, and that's how they get sick. So for people who get sick, they can suffer severe illness. They may need to be put on a mechanical ventilator. They may be sedated and treated with strong antibiotics. And those injuries are compensable. They can get money for those if we can show who caused the outbreak.
Yeah, I got to get ready to go, but I want to ask you that question about that. How do you go about proving the negligence from your perspective as an attorney?
Well, with a large case like this, where the health department is tracking the source of it, they've got the proof. The science is there. They're able to actually match the illness, the Legionella bacteria in the patients, to the Legionella that's growing in the towers itself. And there's a strong evidence that that's the source of the illness. And we sue them. Ultimately, we'll sue them in court for civil damages and seek money compensation for the people who are hurt.
Well, Ronald, we got to leave it there, but thank you so much for giving us the insight, and we'll continue to follow this story as it continues to unfold and develop. Ronald J. Catter, who is from the Catter Law Firm. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, if you want more information, visit the website, catterlaw.com, and then follow them on Facebook at Catter Law Firm. More show. We'll be back in a minute.